शुक्लां भरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नमुपशान्तये। दक्षिणामूर्तिसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुर्साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। अखण्डमण्डलाकारं व्याप्तं येन चराचरं तत्पदं दर्शितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। गणपति बप्पा जय श्री राम। So 21st, in a couple of days, we have Rama's birthday, right? As we would call in English. Of course, we call it as Rama Jayanti or Rama Navami because he was born on a 9th waxing moon day. We call it as Navami. So what happened is, Navami and Ashtami, that is the 9th day and the 8th day, were very upset. So we are aware of how our calendar works, right? It's a fortnightly calendar. Our lunar calendar is a fortnightly calendar. 15 days of waxing moon and 15 days of waning moon. So each of the day has got some importance, right? The most important, of course, is Ekadashi, which has got a lot of importance. And Dashami and Dwadashi gain importance because of Ekadashi. Trayodashi is important for Shiva. Chaturthi is important for the Ganpati. Sashti is important for, there's a 4th day, 6th day is important for Kartikeya. Prathama, that is the first day is of course important because it turns out to be the first day either after Purnima or Amavasya, and most of the time it also turns out to be the first day of the month. So Ashtami and Navami were very upset because it was also considered inauspicious for any good things. So Ashtami and Navami went to Vishnu and they said, you created us, right? You created all the day, all the night, all the dates, the months, the calendars, everything you created. Why is it that you are partial against us? Why is it that you didn't pay us enough attention? Why is it that you didn't make us auspicious enough? That is unfair. You need to make us equally auspicious. So Vishnu listens to them lovingly, and he says, there will come a time when I will take avatar on earth, and that time I will choose you both as the dates. So Krishna avatar happens on an Ashtami, and Ram avatar happens on a Navami. So that is how Ashtami and Navami got actually more importance, because God, when he decided to come on earth as an avatar, he chose those two dates to be born in. So how do we celebrate birthday? We don't celebrate, of course, cutting cake and blowing out candles. Well, that's a big no. We don't blow candles in our birthdays. We light candles, we light lamps. We don't blow out. Blowing out is not considered to be auspicious. The way we celebrate birthday is to light as many candles, as many lamps, preferably in front of God. Do something which is nice, sweet, something that we like. Offer it as a nevedya and then we have it. That's the general way in which we do our birthdays, and that's the way we generally celebrate birthdays of gods as well. Of course, there is some puja to be done. There are certain Vedic rules around certain festivals. But predominantly this is what happens. Rama, in spite of being, something I covered in the morning also, Rama, in spite of being a son of an emperor, okay, he ensured that his birthday is very simple. He is a Saulabhya Murti, which is simplicity personified, right? He ensured that his birthday is so simple that the poorest of poor can also celebrate with as much fervor. Rama Navami also happens to be the Jayanti, okay, the birth date for Samartha Ramdas. We covered his story in detail a few weeks ago. He chose Rama Navami as his birthday. Rama Navami also is considered as the birthday for Sai Baba. Nobody knows when he was born. Somebody went and asked him, Baba, can we celebrate? You keep talking of Rama. Can we celebrate Ram Navami as your birthday? Generally, saints do not reject any such request. He said, yeah, do that. So he just permitted them to celebrate. We don't know whether he was born on that day, but that is the day that is celebrated as his birthday. So it's a very auspicious day, and I hope it brings in a lot of peace, health, wealth, prosperity for all of us. The word Rama, okay, I'd like to spend a few minutes on the word and its power. Rama Rame Rameti Rame Rame Manorame Sahasranama Tattulyam Rama Nama Varanane. This is a word, this is a phrase that is used in quite a few Rama Stotra. It is there in Ram Raksha Stotra, it is also there in Vishnu Sahasranam. So what happens is, we all know the basic story and the plot of Mahabharata, right? 18 days of Mahayuddha, the great war that happened to establish Dharma. A lot of people die, very few people live. Bhishma on the 10th day has fallen on the bed of arrows, right? Created by Arjuna for him. His favorite grandson created that for him. And he's lying there for his day of deliverance. He doesn't die immediately, he dies after. There are different counts, 59, 108, there are different stories around that. But he waits for Uttarayan to come. And he's waiting for his death. The war is over. Krishna says to Yudhishthira, the eldest of the Pandava brothers, now that you are going to ascend the throne, you are going to become the king of Hastinapur, you go and meet Yudhishthira, because Yudhishthira is a whole bank, is a whole universe of knowledge. He's been administrating Hastinapur for the last 3 to 4 generations. He holds a lot of knowledge on how a king has to be, what he's supposed to do, what he's not supposed to do, what is commonly called as a Rajya Dharma. He's supposed to be an expert in that. You go and meet him and get trained so that you then become a good king. And nobody else other than Bhishma can really train you in that. So Yudhishthira for a few days comes and he gets his blessings and he learns a lot of things from Bhishma. Yudhishthira comes to Bhishma and he, after all the training that happens, he comes on the last day and he asks, who is that God to whom we should pray, and who is the God and how do we pray to him, and how do we achieve divinity? So there are 7 questions that he asks, and Yudhishthira in answer to that recites the entire Vishnu Sahasranam, supposedly one of the most powerful shlokas on planet Earth. Vishnu Sahasranam is so powerful that if you hear it daily, if you recite it daily, there will be no difficulties that will come to the family, there will be no poverty, there will be no illnesses that will come to the family. Vishnu Sahasranam is considered to be that powerful. Vishnu Sahasranam is basically 1000 names of Vishnu. Vishnu Sahasranam. Sahasra means 1000. Vishnu's 1000 names. That is what literally it means. When Bhishma is reciting that, the whole universe is watching. Gods are watching, Devas, Yakshas, Kannaras, everybody is watching from the heavens. Shiva, Parvati themselves are watching. And Bhishma finishes the entire Vishnu Sahasranam. Parvati in Kailasa asks Shiva, she says, this is so beautiful, Vishnu's 1000 names, there are so many good things that will happen. But I have children who are not so intelligent, who probably are ignorant. They would not know how to recite these 1000 names. Do you have a shortcut to this? Do you have anything that is so short that even they can follow? They can also get the same benefit by doing that. That is the time Shiva recites this. He says, Sri Rama Rama Rameti Rame Rame Manorame Sahasranama Tattulyam Rama Nama Varanane. He says, if Rama's name is uttered just thrice, okay, just thrice, it is equivalent to uttering 1000 names of Vishnu. Tat Tulyam, it is equivalent to uttering 1000 names of Vishnu. That is the power of Rama. That is the power of the word Rama. Rama turns out to be the most powerful word on planet Earth, which is for Saguna Bhakti. Technically, Om, the Omkara Shabda is considered to be the most powerful, but it is Nirguna Nirakara, so it is formless. It's very difficult to fix our mind on something and concentrate and do a meditation. The next best option, based on which one can get into a trance, based on which one can do meditation, is the word Rama. Rama also has a Katapayadi Sankhya angle to it. So what is Katapayadi Sankhya? Katapayadi Sankhya is something that I have covered in my earlier season also. Our ancestors were so great that they were experts in literature, they were experts in mathematics, they were experts in a lot of other topics. They were also experts in merging literature with mathematics. So they gave numbers to consonants, they gave numbers to vowels, and they formulated mathematical formulations. So at the outset, it will look like a shloka, it will look like a mantra, it will look like a bhajan, but there will be an underlying cryptographic message which will come to become a mathematical formula, or maybe it might be indicating a particular date. Okay, so this is something that they did. So this is called as this science is called as Katapayadi Sankhya. So ka, kha, ga, gha, nga. So that will have 1, 2, 3, 4. There will be numbers given for each, and all vowels are considered as 0. And then there will be a shloka which will be mentioned. So Rama has a Katapayadi Sankhya equivalent of 10. Ra is 1, Ma is 0. Okay, so 10. So when you mention Rama thrice, it is not 10 into 3, it is 10 to the power of 3. So what is all mathematics students will know, children who have joined, 10 to the power of 3 is how much? 1000. Right? So Rama when uttered thrice is equivalent to uttering Vishnu's 1000 names. That's a Katapayadi Sankhya angle to it. Rama undoubtedly is the most beautiful name. Right? Rama is undoubtedly the most beautiful person as well. This is something I should have probably told at the beginning of starting Ramayana. How are you supposed to enjoy Ramayana? The way we should enjoy Ramayana is not just hearing like a story. Okay, there was a person called Dasharatha, he had a son called Rama, he was a great guy. He wielded bow very well. No, that's not the way we should actually enjoy Ramayana. We should feel Rama to be our own family person. We should feel and emote along with him. We should feel that emotional connection with Rama, as if he's my brother, as if he's my son, as if he's my father, as if he's my husband. That's the way you should feel about Rama, and then enjoy Ramayana. As Rama lives his life, we should be happy for him, we should be sad for him. And that emotional connection is what will really drive the entire story. And that is very important. Who's Rama? Rama is the most poised of humans. He is the most beautiful of humans. Rama is a Purushottama. Rama is the best amongst humans. Rama is grace personified. Rama is patience personified. Rama is strong. Rama is calm. Rama is very wise, intelligent. Rama is very soft spoken. Rama is soft natured. Rama has a soft tongue. Rama is manly. Rama is muscular. Rama is lovable. Rama is a loving brother. Rama is a loving son. He is a helpful friend. He is a doting father. He is a worthy enemy, an enemy worth. Somebody like Rama is a worthy enemy. Rama is an ideal husband. Rama is a controlled aggression. Rama is dharma. Rama is puja. Rama is bhakti. Rama is karma. Rama is jnana. Rama is in everybody. Rama is in everybody, and everybody is in Rama. Rama is God, and God is Rama. That is the way we have to view Rama. That is the way we have to look at Rama, and hence, and thus you will get the beauty of listening to his story. You will get the benefit of listening to the story. This is important. This is something I should have probably done in the first session itself, because this sets a good background. It's never late, because Ramayana is now going to pick up. He's just begun the journey, so it's now going to pick up. We have to view Rama in this form so that we then understand what we are really looking at. When Vishnu decides to take an Janma, what does he do? He basically comes with his gang, right? He comes with his own set of people, right? He comes with his chakra, he comes with his Sheshnag, he comes with his team. Why does he do that? Because an avatar cannot just be done individually. It has to be a team effort. Right? So Rama, Lakshmana, Bharata, Shatrughna. Who are these people? Rama is Vishnu himself. Lakshmana is the Sheshnag, the bed on which Rama sleeps. Naga has taken an avatar as Lakshmana. The conch, the Panchajanya conch, okay, that is Bharata. That takes an avatar as Bharata. And Sudarshana Chakra takes avatar as Shatrughna. Okay. Ramayana, I have told you, has been written in lot of languages, 250 odd languages. Most of them are authentic, some of them are avoidable. But the most authentic, of course, is Valmiki Ramayana. The next best and the most popular Ramayana in today's world is Ramcharitra-manas, written by Tulsidas, Goswami Tulsidas. He wrote Ramayana in Awadh. Awadh is a language. He wrote that in Awadh language. There is a beautiful bhajan, okay, Ramastuti that he penned after writing Ramayana. A lot of people have sung it. Of course, I'm going to spare you of my singing, but I'll anyway read out to you all. Okay. It says, Shri Ramachandra Kripalu Bhajamana Harana Bhava Bhaya Darunam Nava Kanja Lochana Kanja Mukhakara Kanja Padakanjarunam Kandarpa Aganita Amita Chavi Nava Neela Neeraja Sundaram Patapita Manahu Tadita Ruchi Suji Naumi Janaka Sutavaram Bajudina Bandhu Dinesha Danava Daitya Vansha Nikandanam Raghunanda Ananda Kanda Kausala Chanda Dasharatha Nandanam Sira Mukuta Kundala Tilaka Charu Udara Anga Vibhushanam Ajanu Bhujashara Chapa Dhara Sangrama Jita Khara Dushanam Iti Vadati Tulasi Dasa Shankara Sesha Munimana Ranjanam Mama Hridaya Kanja Nivasa Kuru Kama Dikhaladala Ganjanam. This is in his praise. Tulsidas has written in Rama's praise how beautiful he is. He is like a lotus-eyed person. He is like a lotus hand, lotus feet. Udara Anga Vibhushanam. He's got a broad chest, a broad head, a nice forehead, strong arms. He's a person who can slay any demon, right? But all of this is Dasharatha's son. And Tulsidas asks to him that you have to come and sit in my heart so that I can pray to you always. There's a beautiful Ramastuti which I thought I should cover at least on just before of the Ramanavami. So we've seen the story to a particular level. We've taken Ram from his birth. We've heard the story of how he was educated, how Vishwamitra came, took him to the forest, killed Tataka, killed Subahu. Then multiple stories that Vishwamitra spoke to them. Ganga's story, Kartikeya's story, story about Ahalya. Okay, all of this is something that we enjoyed. This is all a part of the Balakand. We enjoyed all of this in the last 2 to 3 weeks. Now we take the story forward. So Vishwamitra has an important role to play. Okay, he had an important role to play in training Rama and Lakshmana. Now that Rama and Lakshmana have done a favor by killing and ensuring that the penance gets completed properly, what happens is now they start off. Now Vishwamitra feels that he should do something for these two beautiful young people and he should be instrumental in getting them married. Because Vishwamitra knows that Sita, who's Lakshmi incarnate, has taken birth and he wanted to become instrumental in ensuring that Sita and Ram get joined in matrimonial bliss. So he starts off. He knows that Janaka has already announced in Swayambara. Vishwamitra now starts off the journey towards Videha Desha. That is where Janaka is ruling. What Vishwamitra does is, Vishwamitra is ahead as a guru and Rama and Lakshmana are behind him walking with reverence. They are at a distance, probably about 10 feet. Now Vishwamitra is, when you walk, you are supposed to walk ahead, you are supposed to look ahead and walk, right? But Vishwamitra every second minute is turning back and looking at Rama and Lakshmana. He'll walk a few steps, he'll turn back at Rama and Lakshmana and walk. He'll again turn back and walk. So the poets say, why was he doing that? Vishwamitra knew, okay, that this is going to be his last contribution to the entire story. Vishwamitra doesn't feature in entire of Ramayana after this. He was feeling sad that he had contributed to a part. Yes, he is a person who taught Rama and Lakshmana how to live in forest. He had a person who taught them important and very important divine weapons, Divyastras. He taught them the Bala Atibala mantras. He taught them which fruit is to be had, which fruit is not to be had. Something like what we do. This fruit has more carbohydrates. This is more in protein. You can have this. You can't have that. Something like a keto diet. So he taught them what is poisonous, what is not poisonous, which fruit will ensure that you can stay for a longer time, how to build a hut, how to make a bed which can be soft and yet be comfortable. So these are the things that Vishwamitra actually taught Rama and Lakshmana. Okay, but his contribution was only this much. After this, he is not going to be there in the entire story. So he was feeling very bad that he is not going to be there. And hence he is to turn back and try and soak the beauty of Rama and Lakshmana as much as he could and enjoy the bliss till the time that moment lasts. So what we'll do now is we'll allow Vishwamitra to enjoy this bliss of walking to Videha Desha. and enjoy the company of Rama and Lakshmana. We'll give them a break. We'll shift our story a little bit to who Janaka is and who Sita is and how she was born. And by the time Vishwamitra hopefully will come and travel and come to the city. So who's Janaka? Right? So Janaka is a Chandravamshi king. He belongs to the Moon clan. Okay, he is a Chandravamshi king. He's been ruling. He and his wife Sunayana has been ruling the country called Videha, and the capital city is Mithila Nagari. Now Janaka is a Karma Yogi. Okay, a unique king, one of its kind. An amazing administrator, a great warrior, but a complete Jivan Mukta, a complete Jnani, a complete wise and philosophically evolved soul. He was so much philosophically evolved, so much of a Jivan Mukta that Vyasa, the person who penned Mahabharata, the person who actually classified Vedas, when he wanted to train his son Shuka, the parrot-headed saint, he said, if you have to learn what Jivan Mukta is, what it is to do your karma and still be detached from it, be a Vairagya, you have to go and learn it from Janaka. So Shuka comes and takes training from Janaka. Janaka is that big of Jivan Mukta. He was a great administrator. He used to live all a normal life as a king. He will administrate the kingdom properly. He will look after his family as a family man, but was completely detached from it. Never ever attached to it at all. That was the kind that Janaka was. So, but Janaka and Sunayana didn't have kids. Now, this is something which is very common. We've been hearing, say, stories of saints. We've been hearing stories of gods. Parents not having children is a common problem. Because to have good children, you have to go through a certain amount of penance. For having saints being born to us, for having gods being born to us, the parents need to do a lot of penance and they have to go through a lot of trouble, and only then God tests them whether they are really good, even when all of us are very good when we are happy. Whether we are good when we are sorrow, when we are sad, is something they will test and only then take birth. So similarly, Janaka and Sunayana also didn't have any child for a very long time, and he longed for a child. So he plans to do a yajna. Okay, those days what people used to do is the king, if they had to do yajna, they themselves will come. It is to be done in a ground. It's not to be done in a house. Okay, it is to be done on a ground which has a contact with Mother Earth. So you have to dig a hole. There is a particular science around it. You have to dig a hole up to a particular size and then build a yajna home or kunda, which is a vessel. You have to build it with bricks. There are count how many bricks can be used. So there are a lot of geometrical design that happens in all of that. So he goes and he finds the ground, he levels it, and he starts digging. He starts digging with his hand, okay, the mud, so that he can build a yajna kunda there. As he builds it, as he furrows it, this action is called furrowing the soil, right? As he furrows it, he finds a beautiful child over there. He says, my God, how can there be a beautiful child lying here? He takes her home. He takes her home and shows it to Sunayana and says, look what I found. I was about to do a yajna and I was cleaning the ground and I was furrowing it. I found a very beautiful, divine looking child there. What do we name her? He said, where did you find? I found her in a furrow. The Sanskrit name for that furrow. The furrow is a place where you dig and loosen up the soil. When you loosen up the soil, that place is called Sita. So they said, we name this girl as Sita. Other names for Sita is, because she was Janaka's daughter, she is called Janaki. Because she was born in Videha Desh, she is called Vaidehi. And of course, the most favorite of my names, because she is born in Mithila Nagari, she is called Maithili. Right? So it's important. Okay, all married men would realize that if you praise your wife, because my wife's name is Maithili, you praise your wife in public, you have peace in home for some time. So I just did that bit. So I'm hoping there will be peace for a while now in my house. Okay. So these are the different names for Sita. A beautiful girl, a divine looking girl. Who is she? She is Lakshmi incarnate. Right? Like Rama was Vishnu incarnate, his wife Lakshmi says, I can't stay without you for a full avatar. I will also would want to come and help you in your act. So Lakshmi comes in the form of Sita. she's growing up. She's growing up into a beautiful girl, a very divine girl, very obedient to her parents, listening to her parents, uncles, aunts, knowing how to do puja, very pious girl, and growing up into a very beautiful, divine, nice girl. Chandravamshi, that is Janaka, they had a bow. Okay, they had a bow called Shiva Dhanush. Okay, Dhanush means bow. Shiva is Shiva's Dhanush. So what happened now? Narada, okay, the king of Bhakta, he always had a habit of picking a battle between two people, picking a war, picking a fight between the two people. So that's his unique trait and a very mischievous saint. So he went to Vishnu and Shiva and he said, who's the powerful of you two? The world needs to know. So they say, how can you establish that? We both are equally powerful. No, somebody has to be decided as the most powerful. So why don't you both get into a battle? Now imagine Shiva and Vishnu getting into a battle. God looking after the creation and God looking after the destruction. They get into a battle, the entire creation will get finished. So what happens is, Vishnu and Shiva are standing for a battle. Vishnu has picked his Dhanush, which is called as a Vishnu Dhanush. And Shiva has picked his Dhanush, which is called as a Shiva Dhanush. Now what happens is, suddenly Shiva realizes, oh, this battle is going to become inconclusive. And the end result is only going to be destruction of Prakriti, destruction of nature. It doesn't help anybody. So he just drops his bow down. Okay, it falls on earth. As it falls on earth with a thud, there's a small crack that comes into it. But that Dhanush is still heavy. It is Shiva's Dhanush, right? So God Varuna is in charge of water. Okay, he comes and gives to Janaka, who is a Chandravamshi, and asks him to keep, he's basically a caretaker. He says, keep it with your family as a heirloom. You keep it with y'all, it will be with y'all as a heirloom, and maintain it, and ensure that you do the necessary puja to it, and ensure that you keep it clean and stuff like that. So Janaka has been having this Shiva Dhanush, and they keep it in a room on a very well decorated table and stuff like that. A small child, Sita, is playing around and her ball rolls down the table. And she is not able to pick pick the ball from the table. What she does is, she comes there, she very easily and very effortlessly picks the table from one side with the Dhanush on it, easily picks it and gets the ball from the other hand and keeps it just like that and walks away. She thinks nobody has seen, but Janaka has seen it from a corner and he's surprised. He thinks Shiva Dhanush is a bow that the most powerful person on earth cannot pick it up. He himself can't pick it up single-handedly. Isn't Sita just so beautifully came there just to pick up a ball? She picks up along with the table with a single hand and gracefully takes the ball and without a thud she keeps it and goes. He was astonished. He was totally surprised. So he says, if there has to be a person who can get married to Sita, it has to be a person who has to be equivalent in her strength, in her grace, in her beauty, in her divinity, who can actually pick this particular bow. So now she is of marriable age. What is the age? She is the 6th. Kaladesh Niyam. Okay? Don't insist, children, don't insist to your parents that you want to get married at this age. Okay? You've got a long time to go. So like any father of a beautiful child, be it daughter or be it son who is of a marriable age, the first thing that comes to their mind is that they need to find a good bride, a good groom. Right? That's the first thing that comes to their mind. Dasharatha also had this thought. Rama is of an age, he's come to 12 years. We need to find a very good groom, a very good bride who is suitable for Rama. Similarly, Janaka is also thinking of having his beautiful daughter married off to a good, eligible bachelor who's worthy of having Sita as his wife. And now that starts worrying him because he needs to find somebody who can pick that Shiva Dhanush. So he's saying, I will keep. So those are the days when it used to have marriage we used to have as a Swayamvar. Girls had a choice. Okay, amongst an array of grooms as to whom they would want to marry. Okay, this is what was the parampara, the tradition. Okay, so they said I will have a Swayamvar in where people will come and try and pick this bow and go, and if they can pick, then I will give Sita as a Kanyadan. So this has been happening for quite some time. People have been coming, trying to pick up. Nobody's been able to pick up. So Janaka is actually fairly depressed. And he doesn't know what to do. He wants Sita to get married, but he also wants it to We want her to be married to a right groom. Now this news spreads, and that is how Vishwamitra comes to know that Sita is ready to be married, and he knows the secret behind who Sita is. So he knows who is the right groom and why they are all waiting for, or why the entire thing is nobody is able to pick. And this is the time that Vishwamitra and Rama and Lakshmana also enter the Mithila Nagari. Now, as they enter Mithila Nagari is a beautiful city, amazing, beautiful gardens, beautiful tree lines, nice houses with balconies and patios, okay, and amazing, amazing architecture and stuff like that. So we should remember, there are two types of people. When we go for a tourist spot, when we go to a tourist spot, there are generally two types of people. There's one type who just wants to see everything. Okay? Oh, I want to see this. Oh, what's next? I want to see that. Oh, what's next? I want to see that. And they are just in a hurry to finish off everything. And then there are some people who just want to enjoy. Okay? Who want to enjoy a lot of things and slowly would want to come and enjoy each of it and slowly do that. Vishwamitra was a person who was in haste. He wanted to see what is next, what is coming next. He was also dazzled by the entire sparkle of Mithila Nagari. So he starts walking fast. Well, Lakshmana and Rama are the ones who want to enjoy it slowly. So they are walking slow. So there's a kind of distance that has got built up. And in the dazzle and the fervor to look at the city, they miss roads. So Rama and Lakshmana take a wrong detour and Vishwamitra has gone ahead. So Rama and Lakshmana, without knowing that they have lost Vishwamitra, they are still looking at the balconies and the gardens and the hanging gardens and stuff like that, and the fountains, and they are walking towards one, and then they suddenly find a few girls playing on a balcony. Okay, the beautiful garden there, and they are playing, and they are playing maybe ball or whatever, and the friends are calling out, Sita, catch this, and she misses it, and it falls down, and that is where Rama and Lakshmana are standing. Sita bends over from the balcony. Sita looks at Rama and Rama looks at Sita. Now this is a moment which has been captured in multiple shlokas by different poets. Okay, this is one of the most beautiful scenes in Ramayana. And they suddenly feel the pangs of separation. Why? Because they are Vishnu and Lakshmi who have got separated for the purpose of avatara, right? So there is a sudden pang of separation that builds into them, and they long for each other. And they keep watching each other, they keep staring each other. Rama sees, wow, who's this beautiful divine girl? And Sita looks at Rama and says, who's this divine looking handsome man? They think nobody has looked into it, but there are a few saints, few rishis, few poets who have looked. One of them was Kamba, who wrote the Tamil Ramayana, who has spent quite an amount of time in actually describing this beautiful scene. So it's one of those beautiful moments in Ramayana. You can imagine, like any other film, the hero and the heroine meet each other. Then this is the first time that they meet each other and they kind of fall in love with each other. Not long, Janaka walks in from behind and checks what Sita is looking at, and then he finds these two handsome-looking persons standing there. So he then asks, "Who are you?" And he just doesn't stop at "Who are you?" He says, "My God, you look so handsome, you look so powerful, muscular. Look at the sparkle in your eye. Look at the broadness of your chest, the power in your hand." The dhanush, the way you are holding it, the grace with which you stand and hold your dhanush. Who are you? These are the questions that he asks. And just about this the time when Vishwamitra suddenly realizes that he's not got Rama and Lakshmana behind, he keeps searching and he comes back and he finds them. So Vishwamitra comes and does the introduction to them. He says, these both are Dasharatha Nandan. He starts off saying, these both are children of King Dasharatha of Ayodhya. But he doesn't stop there. He says they are born to Dasharatha, but they were brought up by Vasishtha. Now generally when we introduce, we don't do that, right? When we introduce who are you, we say so-and-so's son, and this is a mother and this is a father. Why did Vishwamitra add that suffix? Why did he say, yes, he is born to Dasharatha? That itself is an introduction, right? Dasharatha is what? He is an emperor. He's saying, it should have stopped there. But Vishwamitra doesn't stop there. He says he is born to Dasharatha, yes, but he was brought up by Vasishtha. Why? Because brought up by Vasishtha has got that much more value. He says he's got the knowledge, he's got the power, he's got the wisdom of Vasishtha, and because he's been completely trained by Vasishtha, he is a king who is in making, but who will only have one wife. He will not be a Dasharatha with 3 wives. That is the basic purpose that's the reason why he mentions that. Janaka had that thought, because those days kings used to have multiple wives, he didn't want to give to a person who will end up having multiple wives. And the reason why he tells this, because Vishwamitra could read Janaka's mind, he tells this. He tells not only that he is Dasharatha's son, but he also says he's been brought up by Vasishtha, so he will be going as per what Vasishtha says and what Vasishtha has done and what Vasishtha has trained him to do. That is an enough introduction for him. And they welcome them. They give them a good apartment to stay and all, and then over the night they discuss things. And in the morning, Vishwamitra asks Janaka that you have a Swayamvar. A lot of people have already tried picking your Dhanush. Now why don't we give a chance to these 2 Kumaras to pick the Dhanush? So he said, why not? We should. So they enter into the darbar. It's a huge darbar that is there. Janaka is sitting on the throne and a lot of ministers, and Shivadhanush is brought. Vishwamitra and Rama and Lakshmana are sitting there. Now Vishwamitra says, he just says, see the Dhanush. Okay? Rama gets up, does namaskar to Vishwamitra, goes and picks up the Dhanush. Vishwamitra actually, Rama is a person who goes by order. He goes by what is being told. He will never exceed his brief. Hope we had such employees in our organization who never exceed our brief. Right? Rama was like that, an ideal employee. Right? So he will never exceed the order. He will never exceed the brief. What is it that Vishwamitra told? He said, go, see the Dhanush. Right? But Rama gets up, does namaskar and goes and picks up the Dhanush. Now why he does that? Poets spend some time here. They say, Rama is a very intelligent and a smart person. He's been trained by Vasishtha to even read between lines and read the language of eyes. So when Vishwamitra apparently told, he said, Rama, go, see the Dhanush. He just does this. Which means he reads that go try the Dhanush, go and pick up the Dhanush, go and pick up the bow. Okay, that is how he reads, because he's got that skill of reading between the lines. Hope we had employees of that kind also, who are smart. So Rama goes, he does namaskar to the Dhanush also, because it is Shiva Dhanush. He does a namaskar to the Dhanush, he puts his right hand and with a single lift he picks up the bow. Everybody is aghast, everybody is surprised. Nobody could even move it an inch. And Rama picks it with so much ease and effortlessness that he just picks up with one hand. He holds the bow in its standing position. Okay, can you see my hand? Yeah. So he holds the bow in a standing position like this. Now when you have to string the bow, okay, the rule, what Janaka has said, that not only pick up the bow, but you have to also string the bow. Okay. So when you string a bow, what you need to do is, you need to bend the bow, because only then there will be enough tension. When you release it, there will be enough tension in the string through which you can then release the arrow, right? So you have to bend the bow to string it. So the string is on the top. He attaches one string to the top. Before you attach, what you need to do when you hold the bow, you need to keep your leg, okay, 1 foot on the bottom of the bow, so that it remains stationed, it doesn't move. Now listen to this carefully, because why I am explaining it in this detail is because there is a beautiful incident that happens. So he holds one part of the bow, which is the bottom part of the bow, with 1 foot, okay, and then holds the other one with his hand, and then strings it. When he strings it, it breaks, it snaps. It already had a crack, but it is Rama who has touched it, right? So it breaks. Now why does it break? Okay, one is because Rama had the strength to break. He ensured that it was so tight that it broke. The other angle, the other vyakhyan, or the other explanation that poets generally give is, the bottom part of the bow got touched by Rama's feet. The top part of the bow felt jealous, it seems, and it said, my God, what is the good fortune that the bottom part has done? It has touched Rama's feet. Even I want to touch Rama's feet, and it gave way and fell at his feet. Okay, so this is what poet's explanation to why it broke. Why I explain the poet's angle? Because listening to stories, yes, Rama was born, he did this, he broke the one, he broke the bow, and got married is beautiful. Nothing wrong in that. But when you enjoy from a poet's perspective, it becomes that much more interesting because each of the poet has added different aspect, different perspective to the story to make it more beautiful, so that it becomes more interesting for us to listen. So the top part of the bow becoming jealous that Rama has touched his feet and I want to touch its feet, so he breaks, that the top part breaks and falls at his feet. Of course, the end result is that the bow has been broken. And there's a whole thud that happens, a whole big noise that happens and it breaks. Everybody is surprised. And then there's Jai Shri Ram, Jai Shri Ram. Everybody is kind of chanting and Jai Ghosh that is happening. Janaka comes and he says, you are the worthy and the worthiest that can marry my daughter, and I would want to give my daughter as a bride to you. Rama says stop. Why Rama says stop? Because it is Rama. Rama says in this avatar, I will not do anything, let alone marry. I will not do anything without asking my parents. Okay. Why he said this avatar? Because the next avatar he does everything without asking his parents. Okay. Krishna gets married innumerable amount of times and not a single time probably asked his parents. Okay, that is Krishna. But Rama was Maryada Purushottam. He was the best amongst men. He was the best amongst what human can think of. So Rama says, wait, I am ready to marry. Personally I am okay to marry, but I need to have the permission of my parents. So somebody has to get my parents to come and bless this occasion. If they permit, I'll surely marry. So immediately Janaka sends his fastest horseman and makes him reach Ayodhya, and he gives the big news of Rama about to get married to Sita. Dasharatha, of course, is really happy. He couldn't have found a better bride. He couldn't have found a better in-law, right, for Rama. Janaka is a Jivan Mukta, a great king, a great warrior, and a great saint in himself. So he said it's an amazing alliance, and it's anyway political alliance, so his kingdom was to anyway get bigger. So Dasharatha was very happy, and they all decide. But then Dasharatha also has another thought in his mind. So he decides, he says, well, good, my one son is getting married. How about 4 sons? All 4 sons getting married. Because Janaka had 2 daughters and his younger brother had 2 daughters. So he said, how about all 4 getting married? So he said, okay, all of us, let's go. So what in Hindi we call Bharat, Shadi ka Bharat. Ayodhya se nikalti hai. The entire Bharat starts off, the entire marriage procession starts off. So crowded, it seems, there is an example that is given. It was so crowded that if you put a small udad ka dal from top, it will not fall on the ground. It will only fall on somebody's head. It was such a packed procession that happened. And this example is given by Kamba. Kamba Ramayana, it gives this particular example. Then they start off and then they reach Mithila Nagari and they are welcomed. There's a royal welcome that happens. Everybody gets their own apartments, The kings and the royals get a larger apartments, the minister gets a smaller, and then the servants get smallest. So it's a huge occasion. The entire city is in celebration mode, garlands, firecrackers, sweets getting done, feasts happening. It's a princess who's getting married to the prince, right? So one of the greatest marriage that the world, that mankind will ever witness. So Dasharatha also reaches, and all of them are now very happy, and they decide on a muhurat. Dasharatha puts his condition saying that yes, I am okay to have Rama married, but I would want all 4 of them to get married in the same place. So once and for all, let all my tension go off. So Janaka also says, good, I also have 2 daughters and 2 nieces, once and for all my tension will also go off. So all 4 get married. Rama gets married to Sita. Lakshmana gets married to Urmila, who's Sita's sister. Bharata gets married to Mandavi, and Shatrughna gets married to Shrutakirti. So this is how the marriage has been arranged. The marriage function starts off, the Vedic chants, the thousands of rishis and thousands of saints who have been called, and there are Vedic chants that are happening. And the marriage as an event starts off. As the marriage begins and the marriage is in its middle, this is the time when the father of the daughter gives what he does is called as a Kanya Dan. Okay? So let me just quickly spend a couple of minutes on this. Okay, what is a Kanya Dan? Kanya Dan is considered to be one of the most precious, shrestha of Dan. Dan is gifting, right? And as a father of a daughter, I am gifting my daughter to the groom. That is what he does. This is called as Kanya Dan. There are a few Dan which is very important, okay, and which is as important. So one is Vidya Dan, giving Dan of education, giving Dan of knowledge, giving Dan of information. Vidya Dan is very important. Anna Dan, again a very important type of Dan, which is feeding food to the needy, feeding food to your guests, feeding food to your parents, feeding food to your family, right? This is Annadan. And Annadan is one of the Shrestha Dan because what happens in Annadan is because that is the only Dan where the person, the recipient, at one point of time will be full. He cannot eat more, right? In any other types of Dan, you keep giving, that person will keep asking, his hunger will never get satiated or satisfied. But Annadan, the stomach, is the only thing which will stop after a particular while. I mean, you will feel you can't take anymore. You will eat for what, 2 days, and then you will go full. And then you can't eat anymore. And the blessing that comes out of such a satiated, such a satisfied stomach is always, that will always work, that will always play. And hence, Annadan also is considered to be a very important Dan. So, Kanyadan, Annadan, and Vidyadan. These are very important Dan. The other important Dan is something that we've been covering in our stories of saints, is the Diksha Vandan, Diksha Dan. A Dan done to a saint. Okay? And the Dan that saint does to the person who's giving. This transaction is again considered to be an extremely divine and a pious one. We have considered it in detail in our sessions. I will not get into detail here. So this Kanyadan, the way it is done is, father holds his hand like this. He holds the groom's hand on the top and he puts his daughter's hand on the top of it and then pours water. That is a sankalpa that the father does. It's a promise that the father does, that this is the gift that I am giving you for your life. You are expected to take care of this gift. This is the panigrahi. This is where the dan happens. There's also a very beautiful ritual, okay, in marriages, and that is where the husband holds the hand of the wife, okay, which is called as panigrahi. So the way it is held is, the lady, the bride will hold her hand like this. Can you see my hand? Yeah? And the groom is supposed to engulf the hand like this. Okay? Now this is called a panigrahi hold. Okay? This is where the wife now becomes an engulfed part of the husband. Okay? When he does this, Janaka does this. Janaka, who Janaka? The Jnani Janaka, the Jivan Mukta Janaka, the detached, the Vairagi Janaka, he also still has that pride. He says, this is my Sita. A king who didn't have any ego at all. When it comes to his own daughter, he said, this is my Sita that I am giving to you. Please take care of her. And there's a whole mantra around that. It's a very beautiful, tear-jerking mantra. So he says, this is my Sita. That Mai had a lot of pride because it is Janaka's daughter, right? The way he is brought up, you know. Relationship between a daughter and a father is extremely special, right? Similarly, the relationship between a mother and a son is also extremely special. So it's a very tear-jerking moment. Janaka has got tears in his eyes, Sunayana has got tears in her eyes, and they have given Dan of Sita to Ram. And Ram, with all his grace, with all his humility, accepts and he says, yes, I will take care of her all my life. Janaka says, you have to ensure that she never ever sheds a tear because of your actions. And he promises that as well. And thus, Sita becomes a part of Rama. Rama actually goes on to say, he promises, he says, whatever is the duty and whatever is the dharma for king till now, I don't know. But I will be a person who will only marry Sita and I will never ever have any other wife in my life. It's a great promise for a king to do in those days. Those days people used to have wives in hundreds. Okay? And for a king to do that as a promise was a great promise. he also goes on to promise, and he says, whenever our names are taken together, it will always be her name that will be taken first. So that is why whenever we call them together, it is always Sita Ram. It is never Ram Sita. Okay? It is always called Sita Ram. So these are promises that Rama does to Janaka to assuage his fear, his concerns, his anxiety that his daughter would be taken care of and she'll be taken care of well. We'll come to this promise even later when they start going to Vanvas, we will come to that. This is the auspicious occasion of Sita and Prabhu Ramchandra's marriage. Experienced Upanyaskars and experienced Pravachakars deal with this in detail with lot of shlokas and lot of mantras, and it really improves the presentation and it really transports us into that situation. I'm a total amateur, but having said that, the auspiciousness doesn't get down, right? It still remains an extremely auspicious moment. We all have witnessed today by medium of this particular storytelling a very beautiful, divine and auspicious occasion of Sita and Ram's marriage. It is something that is to be cherished. It is something that we all should be blessed. And may this marriage, and may for having attended this marriage, may our lives be filled with happiness. May it be filled with peace of mind. This is a prayer on the happy occasion of Sita and Ram's marriage. I'll be continuing the story. We have about 5 minutes. We'll continue the story. After this, I had asked in the group, all those who have, to whatever extent, if you have not done, it's also okay. If you have done some sweet, after this session, we are supposed to show a Nevedya, distribute it amongst your family members, and eat it as a prasad of the session of having attended this beautiful occasion. Think about Sita and Rama and enjoy the bliss of having attended that marriage, although verbally, but you can really surely rethink about it and enjoy it and have consumed that prasad. This also is a tradition. So my mother has just also reminded me to tell you that this also is a custom, this is a tradition to do it. Which anyway I had mentioned. So after staying there for a few days, because they are very emotional, Rama and Sita now, along with the entire bandwagon, full Ayodhya gang that has come there, now they begin their journey. They begin their journey going back towards Ayodhya. As they begin their journey, there are a lot of ministers and a lot of experts in Dasharatha's camp. They say that we begin the journey, yes, but the shakun, the indications don't seem to be very good. Okay, we call it as shakun. So what is this shakun? There is something called as a Shakuna Shastra and something called as a Nimitta Shastra. Now, what are these? These are actually not just some humbug. They are actually scientific arts. Shakuna means bird. Our ancestors had the knowledge and ability to see, understand the nature, the movement of birds, the chirping of birds, the flutter of birds, the direction in which they fly. They were able to understand the meaning hidden behind it and understand the change in the nature that is happening under it. So generally what happens is animals and birds, because they don't have the sixth sense, they have by nature, they are very attuned to Prakriti, to nature. While humans, because of the intelligence, we've got distance from nature, so we are not able to read the changes that happen in nature. Generally what happens in case of tsunamis or in case of earthquakes, you'll generally find a flutter of birds, generally you'll find animals going uphill. These are the things that will generally happen. Because by nature they are very tuned to Prakriti. So Shakuna Shastra means, Shakuna means bird. Shakuna Shastra means ability to understand with the movement of birds, they will understand that something is not happening right. That is what we call a Shakun. Wo Shakun acha nahi tha, ye Shakun acha hai. When we say that, basically it is from that. Nimitta Shastra is understanding the same thing from the movement of animals. Okay. Now he had experts who can guide Dasharatha. So Dasharatha, when they started their journey, the experts say the Shakun is not right. The bird's movement is something indicating of something untoward that is going to happen. Dasharatha says, what untoward can happen? We are here with our full army, there's Janaka's army, there's Rama, and we all got married just now, and it's a happy occasion. What untoward can happen? Out of nowhere, there's a sudden storm that comes in, and there's a whole tall 7 feet person standing in front of them with a bow, arrow, and an axe in his hand. This person is Parashurama. I am actually done with my time. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll stop the story at this level. Technically, I would have loved to finish off Balakanda because once Parashurama's Garva Bhanga, which is he gets humbled. Okay, his Garva means ego, Bhanga means breaking. Once his ego gets broken and he gets humbled, that is where the Balakanda gets ended. I would have loved to start from Ayodhya Kanda in the next session, but that's okay. I understand it's almost an hour and all of you are sitting. So we'll end the story here. Dasharatha and an entire gang is started off, and Parashurama from nowhere and with full rage, full anger now is standing in front of them. Why is he angry? He's angry because Shivadhanush has got broken, right? Shivadhanush has got broken and he could hear the twang in the Mandara Parvata in Himalaya where he was standing. He's doing tapas, he could hear that. And he thought it is a blasphemy, he thought it is not right, he thought it is an insult to Shiva that somebody should break a Shiva Dhanush. So he comes. Parashurama had got a gift from his father that he can transport himself anywhere in split second. Okay? That gift was given to him because he should ensure that by nightfall he should be back into Mandara Parvata, he should not be there on face of earth anywhere else. That was a blessing that was given by his father. We'll come to this story briefly in the next session. So this Parashurama, who killed 21 generations of Kshatriya for their fault that they did, in full rage and anger, now is standing in front of a 12-year-old Rama, and now all of them are petrified. The entire Dasharatha gang is petrified because Parashurama is known to slaying generations of Kshatriyas, and they don't know why Parashurama is now angry. So like any other serial that we have, we end up in a suspense. So I thought I'll end up in this suspense so that we can then catch up ourselves in the next session and explain the story of what happens to Rama and Parashurama and then way forward. Hope I was audible and you guys liked it as well. Great, great. Great. Thank you. Thanks Puranji. Thanks Kaki. Thanks a lot. I know. Right. So Rajesh had actually told me that you all belong to Ayodhya. So it's really very nice, very nice. Yes, it is a Pavan Bhumi and we are glad. I don't know whether I'm politically being correct, but I think I should mention. We are glad that Divya Ram Janmabhoomi Mandir is going to get built on his birthplace, and it is going to happen in our lifetimes. Yeah. Yes. We'll surely touch base with you. Thanks for the invite. Thank you, Pananji. Thank you. So we'll do, if no questions, then we will do Hanuman Chalisa. Right? Great. Thank you. Shri Guru Charana Saroja Raja Nijamana Mukura Sudhari Barana Raghuvala Vimala Yasu Jodaya Kupalachari Buddhihina Janike Sumiro Pavana Kumar Bala Buddhi Vidya Dehu Mohe Haro Klesha Vikar जय हनुमान ज्ञान गुण सागर जय कपीस तिहु लोक उजागर रामदूत अतुलित बल धामा अंजनी पुत्र पवन सुत नामा महावीर विक्रम बजरंगी कुमति निवार सुमति के संगी कंचन वरण विराज सुबेसा कानन कुंडल कुंचित केसा हाथ वज्र और ध्वजा विराजे कांधे मूंज जनेऊ साजे शंकर सुमन केसरी नंदन तेज प्रताप महाजगवंदन विद्यावान गुणी अति चातुर राम काज करिबे को आतुर प्रभु चरित्र सुनिबे को रसिया राम लखन सीता मन बसिया सूक्ष्म रूप धरि सियहि दिखावा विकट रूप धरि लंक जरावा भीम रूप धरि असुर संहारे रामचंद्र के काज सवारे सजीवन लखन जियाए, श्री रघुवीर हर्षि उर लाए। रघुपति कीन्ही बहुत बढ़ाई, तुम मम प्रिय भरत ही सम भाई। सहस बदन तुमरो यश गावे, अस कहि श्रीपति कंठ लगावे। सनकादिक ब्रह्मादि मुनीसा, नारद सारद सहित अहिसा। जम कुबेर दिखपाल जहांते, कवि कोविद कहि सके कहांते। तुम उपकार सुग्रीवहि कीन्हा, राम मिलाए राजपद दीना। तुमरो मंत्र विभीषण माना, लंकेश्वर भय सब जग जाना। जो जन पर भानु, लील्यो ताहि मधुर फल जानू। प्रभु मुद्रिका मेरि मुख माहि, जल दिलांग गए अचरज नाहि। दुर्गम काज जगत के जेते, सुगम अनुग्रह तुम्हरे तेते। राम दुआरे तुम रखवारे, होत न आज्ञा बिन पैसारे। सब सदा है तुम्हारी शरणा, तुम रक्षक काहू को डरना। आपै तीनों लोक हांकते कापे, भूत पिशाच निकट नहीं आवे। महावीर जब नाम सुनावे, से रोग हरे सब पीरा। जपत निरंतर हनुमत बीरा, संकट ते हनुमान छुड़ावे। मन क्रम वचन ध्यान जो लावे, सब पर राम तपस्वी राजा। तिनके काज सकल तुम साजा, और मनोरथ जो कोई लावे। सोहि अमित जीवन फल पावे, जुग परताप तुम्हारा है प्रसिद्ध जगत उजियारा। साधु संत के तुम रखवारे, असुर निकंदन राम दुलारे। अष्ट सिद्धि नव निधि के दाता, असवर दीन जानकी माता। राम रसायन तुम्हारे पासा, सदा रहो रघुपति के दासा। तुम्हारे भजन राम को पावे, जन्म जन्म के दुख बिसरावे। अंत काल रघुबर पुर जाई, जहाँ जन्म हरि भक्त कहाई। और देवता चित्तन धरहि, हनुमत से सर्व सुख करहि। संकट कटै मिटै सब पीड़ा, जो सुमिरै हनुमत बल बीरा। जय 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 हनुमान गोसाई, कृपा करहु गुरुदेव की नाई। ये शत बार पाठ करे कोई, छूट ही बंदी महासुख होई। जो यह पढ़े हनुमान चालीसा, होए सिद्धि साखी गौरीसा। तुलसीदास सदा हरिचेरा, कीजे नाथ हृदय मह डेरा। पवन तनय संकट हरन, मंगल मूर्ति रूप। राम लखन सीता सहित, हृदय बसहु सुर भूप। सियावर रामचंद्र की जय, के बोलो हनुमान की जय।